Angeles. This is about 5 years ago, and I used to see rock and roll bands like every night of the week, like 1,000 bands, like over like this 3-4 year period. All my friends were musicians or affiliated with the industry, and sometimes I'd see 10 bands in a night. I mean, I was that active. But the only time that I ever actually sang was at an event called Skid Row Karaoke. Skid Row Karaoke is not named after the glam metal band. It's named after the location where the event was held, which is in Skid Row, Los Angeles, which is an area that's roughly the size of, say, Central Square all the way to Inman Square and everything in between. And it's an area of Los Angeles where most of the homeless shelters are kind of just clustered. And because they didn't have enough beds for all the homeless people that are in Los Angeles, they created zoning that allows people to sleep outside. And they sleep on the sidewalks. And when you walk down the street, you'll see cardboard box after cardboard box after cardboard box after cardboard box. And it's horrible. You might be familiar with the movie The Soloist. That took place in Skid Row. That would be a sanitized version of Skid Row. And you know, and that looked pretty horrible in the movie, but it's actually much worse in reality. A lot of mental illness, unchecked, going through there because people drop off homeless people from hospitals out in the valley and stuff because it's easier to just dump them out where they can't find their way back. And it's just a horrible, horrible place to be, especially if you're a woman, by the way. It's really bad. And I would go down there on occasion to take photographs of musicians that were out there just because I like taking pictures of musicians. And I would go down there with my activist friends on Wednesday nights to feed the homeless. We'd go out there with vegan food, and we would just hand out stuff with no political affiliation or religious affiliation or anything. It's just to be cool, you know, because it's nice to be nice, you know, to people. And thank you. And so I'd go out every Wednesday night with my friends, and we'd have these big pots of vegan food, and we distribute it out there. So one night, I'm out there, and this transgender woman comes out named Bobby Scott. I know all the regulars out there. And she's like all done up that night with like a feather boa and like a prom dress or something. Like she was going to sing like backup vocals for Diana Ross or something. So, you know, I talked with everybody there. I'm like, why are you dressed up? You know, the Academy Award party's like down here or something. And she goes, oh, I'm going to Skid Row Karaoke. I always dress up for Skid Row Karaoke. And so I'm like, Skid Row Karaoke? That sounds awesome. Like, what is that? And she points to this storefront church that's on the corner of 7th and Santa Fe, which is the heart of Skid Row. And I can see kind of the open door on the corner and the kind of the congregants of homeless people standing out there among, you know, people that are passed out on the street and stuff like that. So I told my friends, I want to take a look at this. And I walk in. And, you know, sure enough, it's homeless people. And they're singing karaoke. So I stand against the back wall, and, you know, I feel safe. You know, so, because I'm walking around there at night all the time. And so I'm watching it. And I'm talking to one of the guys who introduces himself in the back. And he says, yeah, this has been going on since, like, the late 90s. And, you know, people come out every Wednesday, and the rules are basically no drinking, no fighting, no drugs, no obscenities, and no dirty dancing. And I thought it was so awesome just seeing these people, you know, in this horrible area singing. And I just decided I wanted to sing also. So I walk up to the book, and I pull out a Beatles song, and it's She Loves You, because I'm not a good singer. I can barely hold a note, but it's a poppy song, and I know the words. So I get up there, and I'm like, she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and all of a sudden, these two guys jump up on stage. And they're singing backup vocals for me. And the audience gets up, and they're all dancing and going crazy, like I'm Elvis with the Beatles backing me up. And the song ends like, she loves you, yeah, 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 yeah. And like they get up and give me a standing ovation and stuff, and high fives and hugs. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then at 9 o'clock, they have their annual tradition there, which is they all get up, including myself, and do the electric slide to the Wild Wild West by Will Smith. It's true. I don't know how that started. Like, somebody just went up and sang it in 1999, and everybody got up, and they had so much fun that it just became the tradition. But that's how traditions start, you know? And so I was hooked. And every Wednesday for the next couple of years, I would go to Skid Row Karaoke and sing. And I started going down there and taking pictures of the singers. And I would treat them like they were the rock stars that that I would shoot at. Here, I'll slide it over here so it's easier for people to see.
Any way to make the photo take up more of the screen?
I don't know.
Zoom?
I don't know. I don't want to.
It's okay.
I'll show it to you guys afterwards. You
Okay.
can't all see it.
There's the electric slide.
Yeah, so anyway, I started going every single week, and it became the start of my week. It became the favorite day of the week for me. And, you know, I told my friends, you know, I'll go to Skid Row Karaoke, and you guys will meet me here, and then we'll feed people outside, go into the electric slide, and then we'll, you know, head out. And I would usually have some concert or a club or LA record event that I'd have to go to. And, you know, I got to know all the people there, like Do-Rag, that's Do-Rag, and, you know, Master Cool, and, you know, Princess the Nun, and Miss Jackson, and James Brown. This guy would always dress like James Brown and sing James Brown songs. And I would always sing the Beatles. And they would sing anything from Bon Jovi to Aretha Franklin to Motown or whatever. And it was just a really, you know...
Is that James Brown?
No, I don't know her name. That might have been James Brown. I'll tell you afterwards if you want to see it. And, but I would keep going every single week. And it was just, for me, a very nourishing for my soul to go in there. And sometimes I would see these people who I got to know pretty well. I would see them out on the streets when I'd be going through just taking pictures or maybe working with some of the other community groups down there, because I became very involved with Skid Row the more I would go down there. And I would see these people, you know, passed out on the street. I'd see them, you know, struggling. I'd go down there and I'd see people with passed out with needles in their arms. I'd see rats, you know, filth, grime, you know, people freaking out. But they always showed up to Skid Row Karaoke. They were always clean. There were never fights. It was just really cool. It was started by a former biker who was a drug addict, and he saw the light in his own way, and he loved karaoke. So he decided to start this, and people just kept coming, partly because it was a safe haven from the streets, and they had food there, but partly because people enjoy singing. And, you know, and it was a non-judgmental room. And, you know, I would go every single week. And sometimes I'd show up at my LA record events with, like, slop on my shirts and stuff like that, because it would just spill on me. Hey, Braden. And my friends, you know, my musician friends would say, why do you have, like, slop and sauce stains on your shirt? And I told them I was at Skid Row Karaoke. And they'd be intrigued by it also. And then they'd start coming down with me. And so I'd start bringing all these rock musicians down there, and they wouldn't sing. They just wanted to see it for themselves and maybe help out, handing out food and stuff like that. And what happened was a couple of my musician friends started confiding in me that they had, you know, homelessness in their families, in their, like, parents, brothers, things like that, from mental illness where they get off their meds, they get lost. And seeing this, you know, in Skid Row made them feel more at ease about their parents, their brothers' plights. And, you know, and it also kind of brought home the fact that, you know, homelessness is not something that's just drug addicts, and it's not just crazy people or people that are lazy. I mean, it affects everybody. It affects suburbs. It affects cities. It was really, interesting to hear that. It made me feel better about that. And I started becoming obsessed with the Skid Row Karaoke. And I told my editor at LA Record I wasn't going to photograph bands anymore. I was only going to photograph Skid Row because I wanted to put a whole project together on it. And so he's like, cool, why don't you do a feature for LA Record? So I'm like, cool, I'll do that. And then one of my friends was working at Huffington Post, and she said, would you be willing to go on my show and talk about Skid Row and homelessness and Skid Row Karaoke? Because after like a year or so, I started becoming a bit of an expert on the homelessness situation in Los Angeles, because I was just always down there. So I go on the show, it was called Wilshire in Washington, and I talked for about 20 minutes or so, and it was really cool. And then my friend calls me back the next day and says somebody at LA City Hall heard the article, and they have an initiative to use the arts to help homelessness, and they wanted to meet with me. So I met with the arts, like Los Angeles Arts something, and they offered me this amphitheater. The John Ansonport Amphitheater holds about 3,000 people to put on a benefit show to kind of benefit the homeless people, and we could bring people from Skid Row Karaoke and some bands and stuff like that. So I agreed to do it, but it was so much work, and it's not my wheelhouse. I've never produced a show, and it's hard enough just to get you guys here. 3,000 people, that was just way too big a commitment for me, and I couldn't do it. And I was unemployed, and I was losing my shirt, and I was beginning to Skid Row myself into Skid Row. And I just ran out of money, and I had to leave. I not only was there not going to be a show, but I was going to have to move back to Boston. So I was really bummed because I felt like I let my friends down, because they were my friends. And that last Wednesday that I was in town, I go to Skid Row Karaoke like I always do. And Miss Jackson right there, I was talking with her on the sidewalk, and she was a former crack addict for like 20 years, and she cleaned up, but she was kind of far gone at this point. Not far gone, like she wasn't crazy, but far gone where she was so broken down out and underclass at this point and unemployable that she was never going to get off Skid Row. And but really nice lady. She always sang Aretha Franklin songs. And she asked me on the sidewalk, Scott, are you going to sing the Beatles tonight? And I said, only if you sing Aretha. And she goes, I'll sing Aretha. And so I said, well, I'll sing the Beatles. And she told me that she was going to be gone. Or actually, first she asked me about the benefit. And I told her that it wasn't going to happen. I couldn't put it together, and it just wasn't going to happen, and I was sorry. And she said, well, that's okay, Scott. We don't even care about the benefit. We're just glad that you come down and sing with us and treat us like regular people without judgment, because we're homeless. And, that just means so much to us, because people don't come from outside Skid Row to be with us. They come to exploit us. And I said, well, I just appreciate you guys letting me sing with you and, be a part of your crew, and I consider you guys my friends, so thank you. And she tells me that she's not going to be there for the next month or two because she's going to get her lower leg amputated. I don't know if it was because of, I can't remember if it was diabetes or gangrene or rot or whatever, infection. That stuff just happens all the time in Skid Row. I mean, Skid Row, someone gets whooping cough, like here, it would just be a cough. There, it's a whooping cough epidemic and people die. It's kind of like what Chris was talking about. When you don't have access to medication or a warm bed or 3 proper meals, you can't handle simple illnesses. And you see a lot of people losing their legs. And Miss Jackson was one of them. And she asked me if I'd be there when she got back. And so I lied to her, and I said I would. And I'd sing her the Beatles. And that night I went in, and I sang the Beatles, and did the electric slide, and went to my LA record event, and the next day got on a train to Boston. And never saw Master Cool, or Miss Jackson, or Do-Rag, or Princess, or any of those people again. But I know that it still goes on, because I saw an article in the LA Times maybe about 3 months ago about it, a feature that was written by one of my friends, Randall Roberts, who's the music writer there, who I actually brought to the event for his first time. And the traditions are still going on, and that's comforting. And sometimes on Wednesday nights, when I'm home in bed and depressed, which happens from time to time, when I see the clock hits midnight, I know that homeless people are doing the electric slide in Skid Row, and I can sleep.